All right. I want to talk about the Ten Commandments today. The biggest part of the reason that I was late is back in, I think it was 2022, I did a series on the Ten Commandments one at a time. It took 10 weeks to get through it. So I'm thinking, how are we going to do this in one message? So it is a lot of material. I'm not going to cover everything, but if you want more detail into each of the 10, the reason I bring it up is go back and pull that up and listen to it. Couple things I want to say before we get started. The morality that built the Western civilization that most of us come from is it was built on the Ten Commandments. 100 years ago, in this country, the majority of Americans could tell you what the Ten Commandments were. They might not all practice them or observe them, but they could tell you what they were. The vast majority. Now, the majority of Christians and Sabbath keepers can't name them off to you. So that's a decline that we're experiencing. Just think in your own minds right now, what are the Ten Commandments? Don't cheat, don't look up there, that's the shortened version. Or tomorrow, if you think of it, say, now what were they? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. What are they? See if you can remember even what they are. If we can't remember them, how much of a part of our life are they? The Ten Commandments are not rules to confine us, restrict us, enslave us. They're designed to set us free. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. They think it's all thou shalt not. And God regulating us to make us, everybody thinks from a mindless idiot to captives. But that's not it. They are designed to set us free. The first 4 deal directly with our relationship with God. The last 6 deal with our relationship, starts with our parents and then morphs into each other, the whole world. They're all interconnected. My final plan was I got a chart that shows the 10 Commandments and then each one of the 603 additional ones for 613 and how they all go up into and they feed into the 10. The 10 are the broad statements, but all of God's commandments are based off of the 10. So, all right. Here's the short list, like I said. Let me see. I don't remember which. Nope. I got to go. Yeah, there we go. Put the list up there, not the short list. One of the things that Satan has accomplished is that he leaves out the introduction to the Ten Commandments. Now, people argue, and some will say verse 2 is part of the first commandment, 2 and 3 are the first commandment. Some say no, but the vast majority of people will start with verse 3 of Exodus 20, and they'll skip the introduction. Myself, I changed the Torah readings to include verse 2. I didn't want to leave the introduction saying this is where God introduces who he is and also the purpose. And that's what I want to talk about when I get to this first commandment here. I am the God that brought you out of the house of bondage. Now, I'm going to pull the actual verse up when we get past this. But if we leave that out, I've said it twice so far in a couple short minutes, that the purpose of God's laws, all of his laws, and the purpose of the Ten Commandments are to deliver us, to free us from bondage. And that's how he starts the list out with, introducing who they came from and what they're there for. And it's one of the things I want to talk about today. You shall not make any idols. You shall not take the Lord's name in vain. So these are all shortened versions still, but here's the list of the 10. Now let's go into these individually. You know, people, I made this statement 100 years ago, the vast majority of Americans could tell you what the 10 Commandments were, and probably people, at least Christian or Jewish parts of the world, could tell you what they were. Maybe in the jungles or Polynesian islands or different places, they don't even know who God is, so they couldn't tell you what the list is. But from the time this country was founded up until whenever it was, down here started, really got the Scopes monkey trial in Tennessee. I don't remember even when that was, when they threw God out of schools and throw him out of the government buildings, and it's accelerated. But from the founding fathers to most government institutions even, they posted this list everywhere. Even today, they're in the halls of Congress, the Supreme Court building. Of course, they tell you you're not allowed to talk about it. They removed a judge from Alabama a few years back because he posted them and refused to take the little monument he had made down. So somehow they're really dangerous to who? So one of the things I want to just ask the question, not going to get into that part of it real big, but why are these so dangerous that Satan hates them so much? You know, we've replaced in society the 10 Commandments in this country and in many others. We've removed those from society and introduced the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto to the point that most people actually believe that those are good things. And they're not, they're evil. But Satan designed it to get us off of what God says to do onto what somebody else says to do. And they're a huge part of society. But let's take a look at them one at a time. Number 1, let me read it. Exodus chapter 20, verse 1. And God spoke these words, saying, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before me. So here's how he starts the statement. And he introduces the 10 Commandments or the 10 sayings or the 10 words, or, you know, people got different ways of referring to them. Most of the people that believe in God will say it's the 10 Commandments. And then the very first thing he brings up is that we should have no other gods before him. We think about why? What does that have to do with him being the one that brought us out of bondage? Is it possible that by not having any other gods other than him, every other conceivable way leads us into bondage? Think about it. Think about it. If we follow him and obey him, he sets us free. But if we follow the ways of man, false gods, Buddha, any other way, those paths all lead into bondage. He wants us to remain free. He promises us freedom and intervention and blessings so that we can be free. But every time Israel, ancient Israel, or any other society departs from these ways, what happens? They go into slavery and bondage. If we don't get this right, these first few verses, we're not going to get the other 9 right either. If you screw this one up, all of the other 9, no matter how hard we try, are not going to be observed correctly either. We'll be compromising. We'll be substituting. We'll be ignoring. If God's not number one in our life, we're going to fail each and every one of the others. The world is full of other gods, the gods of politics, the gods of entertainment, the gods of sports, the gods of family, the gods of social media. You'll realize that social media is designed to entrap you and ensnare you and enslave you. Anybody thinks that's really into social media, what happens if, why don't you, even today, right now, if you're listening, why don't you just reach over and turn your phone off? And leave it off till sundown tonight. Will you be, where is that phone? What did I do with it? Let me check my fake book. Let me look at Twitter or Snapchat or whatever, any of the other ones, or doesn't matter which one. They're designed to be addictive. Anything that's addictive enslaves us. If we say, no, not for me, you get withdrawal symptoms. So all of these simple little things. The gods of money, oh, that gets a lot of people. The gods of every imaginable thing out there. There's so many other gods out there that people place in front of God. And they say, oh, I believe in God. I love him. I dedicate my life to him. And they really don't. So many things, if it comes up, comes before God. It's like, what part of thou shalt have no other gods before me is he talking about? What doesn't that include? Family coming by? Oh, not going to church today. Children's school events? I don't care which one it is. Work? Boss calls you, hey, I really need you. Doesn't matter what it is. Does it come before God? Yes or no? It's a simple answer. If we can't say yes and then put it into practice, how are we going to do on the other 9? Think about it. It's pretty simple. First commandment forbids us to worship other gods. It really is kind of short. Sabbath keepers think that they understand this. I'm going to give you a couple little examples, but here's one of my pet peeves. It really is. I've talked about this many, many times. What is one that almost, and people will think, oh, you're going extreme again. This is, what are you bringing this up for? What is one that almost every Sabbath group that is out in the United States, at least, different countries have different rules. Every Sabbath church group, community, synagogue, I don't care, out there violates. They're going to set something up for people to come and worship God. And if you would ask him and say, which God? Basically, it's going to come down to, well, the creator of the heavens and the earth, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the father of Jesus. They'll be pointing to our Father. So they set up the organization that's going to be used for this, and the very first thing they do is they go out and incorporate, ask the state permission to exist. The state creates a corporate charter and says, here's all the rules and regulations you're going to follow. And then, since they're a corporate government corporation whose creator is the state that they've created it in, they go to the IRS and they apply for permission to be tax exempt. Something universally in this country that until you incorporate, you already have that. They all become a 501c3. They all become a corporation. Exodus 23, verse 32. You shall make no covenant with them nor with their gods. You're making a covenant with the God of the state. And you're violating what God says to do. Now, when a church or organization, and then I've actually had people ask me, say, are you a licensed preacher? Not just no. Heck no. I'm not going to ask the state for permission or anybody else. Back in the 80s, well, I didn't get into that. All right. So how do you incorporate? What are you doing? They can't even get started and have their first service without violating the first commandment. See what I say? If you don't get this one correct, you're going to screw up everything else that follows afterwards. You shall make no covenant with them, nor with their gods. They shall not dwell in your land, lest they make you sin against me. For if you serve their gods, it surely will be a snare to you. Exodus chapter 34, verse 14 says, For you shall worship no other God, for the Lord whose name is jealous is a jealous God. And one of his names is jealous. He don't want us worshiping other God. Many times he says it provokes him to anger. There's hope, though. There's hope for everybody. 2 Chronicles 7:14 says, If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, and seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven, and I will forgive their sin and heal their land. So God promises us that if we repent of our sins, we turn from the evil, he's going to hear our prayers, and he's going to heal us. I've become convinced that the only way that the first commandment's truly going to be followed, even this one small branch of it, the corporation, the 501c3, and I don't see this happening before Jesus returns, but if the people would say, I'm not coming and I'm not giving to the government. I want to come and worship God, and I want to come and give money to him. Once you give it to a corporate 501c3, there's all kinds of rules, regulations, and everything else. You know, technically, when they shut all the churches down because of COVID, they had every right to. And I believe that's one of the reasons why they were so bold. Because these were all government churches that exist on the whim of the government, that they can cancel their charter and dissolve them if they don't follow the rules. They agree to this to become part of this, so they can completely regulate them. Now, it would be politically incorrect to do it, but you know, the government has done politically incorrect things before. That's one of the things when the attorney contacted me in 2020 and asked me, he wanted to sue the governor, to sue the state, And I got talking to him. I says, you realize we are not a corporation. We are not a 501c3. They have no jurisdiction and authority over us. And so that was going to be part of the lawsuit, because by edict, they would have just rolled over and claimed that they were. But let's take a look. There's many, many, many ways to violate the first commandment. I only gave you a couple. But let's take a look at the second one. Exodus chapter 20, verse 4. Let me read this one. It says, "You shall not make for yourself a carved image, any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God." Here it is again. He's jealous. "Visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing mercy to thousands, to those who love me and keep my commandments." Now, most people would agree with this, right? Most people wouldn't have a problem. Unless maybe you're Catholic and you've got the, well, I call them idols. I don't know what they call them, around all over your house, and that's part of your worship. But most Christians wouldn't have a problem with this. I'm going to propose to you that maybe 50% or more of Christians in this country would have a problem with this. Say, how? Forget that they go to church, and when they go there to worship God, they got a dead guy hanging on a cross that don't look nothing like Jesus looked. And that's part of their worship, and paintings on their walls of him and all this stuff. I'm talking about other things. Let me give you just one example. In this country, there's something celebrated. Now, not 50% of the people celebrate it, but if you come out and you make a statement against it, they think, well, wait a minute, that could be hate speech. That could be... You ever hear of anything called Pride Month? Anybody? Yeah. Every June. Let me give you the definition. Googled it this morning. Dr. Google. Pride Month is celebrated in June to honor the LGBTQ plus community and commemorate the 1969 Stonewall Uprising. It is the time for celebrating LGBTQ plus culture and achievements, raising awareness for the ongoing pursuit of equal justice, and honoring the history of the alphabet soup people rights movement through events like marches, parades, and festivals. You say, if we were going to have, there's cities in this country where you're going to have a rally, a march, or something. You got to go first. You got to go and get a permit, or at least they convince everybody you got to go get a permit or permission to do it. But they are highly regulated. There are laws about, in many parts of this country, protesting too close to an abortion clinic. You could be arrested. In some countries like England, there have been people arrested for praying outside of them. Oh, they've done it here too? Okay. So there's all kinds of ways to violate this, but let's take a look at what Exodus 34 verse 12 says. "Take heed to yourself, lest you make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land where you're going, lest it be a snare in your midst. But you shall destroy their altars, break their sacred pillars, and cut down their wooden images. For you shall worship no other God, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God. Well, over and over, this jealous thing keeps coming up. So it's okay to take a flag or something and burn it, or, some politician, some image of a politician, and cut their heads off. I know there was one woman, comedian on TV, cut the head off of a fake head and, had blood all over it. And that's okay, and people celebrate that. But if you did these things out in public with a pride flag or some other symbol, especially during June, they'd probably come arrest you. There would be such a commotion over it that people are going to get arrested. You get arrested for at least disturbing the peace, because I guarantee you that would disturb the priests. So that one really don't apply in this country either for the masses. So, well, you shouldn't do that. A lot of people say, well, I shouldn't even be talking about it. Well, maybe we'll get knocked off again and banned. But either way, there's so many ways to violate the second commandment than most people think. It's more than just carving something, setting it up, and then bowing down and worship like most people assume. Because most that would be included, but that's not the only way, is my point. So these are big, broad subjects that so many people violate in so many ways. So now let's take a look at the third commandment. Exodus 20, verse 7. Read it. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. For the most part, growing up, I was taught that this was cussing. Now, that would be an example of violating it, yes, taking his name in vain like that. But it's more than just cussing. Do we do evil things? Well, representing ourselves as one of his children, and we're doing evil things. There used to be a business, finally it got sold, went out of business, whatever. It was down on Kingston Pike. It was a muffler shop. And they'd post the different of the 10 commandments out there. I don't ever remember them posting thou shalt not steal, but maybe they did. But it was associated with a company that was famous at the time for $600 brake jobs. Well, now $600 brake jobs with inflation, that's pretty common today. But I remember working in a junkyard when I was a kid in the summertime, and people would scrap their cars out because they came from one of these muffler shops, and they told them, to replace your brakes is going to be $300, $400, $600. And they said, well, the car ain't worth that. So they'd scrap it out, junk it. And that was at a time when you could go down and buy brakes for your whole car for less than $5. But there's more ways than that even. The third commandment tells us that the God we worship is holy, and he's got to be treated as holy. Not just in our speech, but in all of our conduct. The commandment teaches us about treating the name, the reputation, and everything associated with God, that all is holy. Look at how Jesus told us to pray in the example in the New Testament. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name. You know, if we dishonor his name in how we live, through our lips, through unfaithfulness in our actions, through unloving behavior to others, through immoral actions, then we're breaking the third commandment. Think about that. If we misuse God's name, we're dishonoring Him. Not just cursing and mocking, not just lying. Oh, that's another one. Lying. But all of these things mock Him in our speech, claiming that we believe in His Son, claiming that we're Christian, but living like the world lives is violating that commandment. When we claim that we're in a covenant relationship with Him and that we're chosen by Him and we violate His laws, we're using His name in vain. We're profaning Him and we're violating the third commandment. That's why Paul condemned others who claim to be in this covenant, claim to be part of it, but weren't in their actions. Take a look at Romans chapter 2, verse 21. You therefore who teach another, do you not teach yourself? You who preach that a man should not steal, do you steal? So here are people saying one thing, teaching one thing, and completely doing another. Verse 22, you who say, do not commit adultery, do you commit adultery? You who abhor idols, do you rob temples? You who make your boast in the law, do you dishonor God through breaking the law? For the name of God is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you, as it is written. So here were people that were proclaiming they were part of a covenant, proclaiming that God chose them, that they had a relationship with Him, but they were violating what He said, and Paul says that they were blaspheming His name by doing something. This is why Jesus condemned the leaders of His day. Let's take a look at this verse here in Matthew 23, verse 23. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you pay tithe of mint and anise and cumin and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faith. These you ought to have done without leaving the others undone. Blind guides who strain at a gnat and swallow a camel. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you cleanse the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they're full of extortion and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisees, first cleanse the inside of the cup and dish, that the outside of them may be clean also. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you're like whitewashed tombs, which indeed appear beautiful outwardly, but inside are full of dead man's bones and all uncleanliness. Even so, you also outwardly appear righteous to men, but inside you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. You know, so many people make their stand on some of God's laws, and then they ignore others. This gives us insight into how Jesus feels about that. If we find ourselves in this situation, we're being hypocritical. We're blind. Inside of us is dead men's bones. Well, people like to look righteous and holy, but do they really live their life like that? Violating that violates the third commandment. You know, the generation that taught their children and their grandchildren that it was a sin to use phrases like, oh my God, Jesus Christ. Here's one, Mary, you'll remember this one. Jeepers Creepers. When she was a kid, she got in big trouble with her mother. I think this, oh, your brother did? Okay. You got in trouble for saying heck. Think about that. If somebody says things like that today, does anybody get upset? You can say stuff like that in church, and it's acceptable to most people. And I remember now, you told me many times, but you're playing Chinese checkers and you were losing and you said, oh, heck, and you almost got your butt beat big time. They use them as substitutes. Let me explain it. People that don't understand why that would be wrong, those are substitutes for swearing. People that wouldn't think about swearing back in the 60s would say things like this. But everybody knew what they meant or knew what they were saying. It's possible to speak the words, oh God, or oh my God, and not sin. It can be part of a prayer. It can be calling out to him in an emergency. But there's 3 words. Start with OMG. Oh, people use that all the time in social media. OMG, how often do you see that? They're doing these things, shortcut for doing these substitutions and evil things, and violating the 3rd commandment. You say, well, now you're just getting too nitpicky. You're getting too extreme here. Well, at what point does this jealous God that tells us not to do these things, at what point does it offend him? You know, let me just wrap this one up with, I think that Satan rejoices every time that happens and he sees it. You've just made his day. You think I'm crazy? Well, then just keep it up. You can ask him when he returns. Let's go on here. Number 4. Let's take a look at number 4. Well, that should be a favorite one of everybody today, right? You're here or you're watching on the Sabbath. Number 4. We got this one in the bag. No need to worry about it at all. Let's read what it says. Exodus 20, verse 8. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall do no work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the 7th day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. All right, so let me make this statement about this. This is probably the most violated or ignored commandment of all of the 10. Who does he leave out in those verses? Who gets rest? Everybody. Children, servants, animals. Animals. Is it possible that God is an animal rights activist? Because most of these guys at PETA and all these other ones, they don't propose that the animals should have off on the Sabbath. At least don't kill them on the Sabbath. Can you imagine? They think these guys were nuts. God says even our animals, we can't put them to work that day. Even strangers, people that got nothing to do with you, strangers, you can't force them to work or tell them they have to work. This is the commandment that unlocks observing all of the other commandments. This is the one that Satan attacks the most, I think. And if we observe this and strive, nobody does it perfectly, but if that's our goal, to do it as good as we possibly can, the rest of the commandments, all of a sudden they become more relevant. If we believe that these come from God, the 10 words, the 10 sayings, the 10 commandments, if we believe that these come from God, then you have to believe that He's commanding us to do this. Think about that one. You believe in God? You believe that He caused the Bible to come about, that He inspired these words to be written down, that He means what He says and He says what He means? Then you have to believe that these commandments are not the 10 suggestions. That we're really supposed to do it. Compromise on the fourth, and you'll compromise on all the others. God's observing us every day. Think about, you're up in heaven, you're looking down, and there is you. From God's perspective, looking down on you. If He looks down on you on the Sabbath, does He see things that are different? That are okay to do on any of the other 6 days, but maybe you're compromising and you're doing things on the Sabbath day. Uh-oh. Could He tell what day of the week it was by watching your actions on that day? And I'm not talking about for a couple hours or a few hours every Saturday. I'm talking about from sundown Friday night to sundown Saturday night. When He looks down on you, do your actions and what He sees transmit that you're obeying the fourth commandment or that you're compromising on the fourth commandment? That's why I say compromise on this one. I don't care what the reason is. Compromise on this one, and pretty soon all the rest can be compromised too. You know, He did say that this was the sign. Got it up there. Exodus 31, verse 12. It says, "And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak also to the children of Israel, saying, Surely my Sabbaths you shall keep. For it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I am the Lord who sanctifies you." The fourth commandment is the sign between God and His people. Some people say, well, the sign between a man and a woman that are married would be the ring that the woman wears on her finger. Compromising on the fourth commandment is the same as the woman saying, well, let me take this ring off when I do this activity because I don't want to think about my husband here for a minute. I don't care what it is she's doing, but anything that causes her to take that sign that she's married off of her hand because she's going to do something that she's not supposed to be doing, broadcasting that she's another man's wife, that's what we're doing with our sign when we violate compromise. I don't care what it is. See, these are all intertwined. Even keeping the Sabbath and having no other gods before Him. I talked about there's the gods of, I named off several. They're all intertwined and interconnected together. All right. Number 5. Take a look at this one. It's another one that's violated so much. Exodus 20, verse 12. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long upon the land which the Lord your God has given you. This is a commandment with a promise connected to it that society no longer teaches. That people that go to church, including those that are in church every Sabbath, violate. But it's a requirement. If we can't honor our earthly father, and that means mother too, I'm not leaving her out. It says father and your mother. Okay? But if we can't honor our earthly father, we can't honor our heavenly one either. There's a severe punishment for not obeying the fifth commandment. Deuteronomy 27:16 says, "Cursed is the one who treats his father or his mother with contempt." And all the people shall say, amen. You know, when it says, and all the people shall say amen, what is that? You know, they should all agree. I'll say, oh yeah. In fact, let's take a look at another one here. Another example in Mark chapter 7, verse 10. See how Jesus, how strongly he felt about the subject. It says, "For Moses said, honor your father and your mother, and he who curses father or mother, let him be put to death." So there's a death penalty attached to not doing this. But you say, if a man says to his father or mother, whatever profit you might have received from me is Corban, that is, a gift to God, then you shall no longer let him do anything for his father or mother, making the word of God of no effect through your tradition which you have handed down, and many such things you do. So this is one example, and Jesus pulled this out, where instead of people honoring their parents and doing the things that God required of them, they found a loophole. They dedicate it and say, well, this now is given to God. My money, my property, my time, whatever it is Corban. And then they tell their own parents, well, I wish I could help you, but I can't because it's Corban. Suffer on. Here's a stone. You're hungry? Here's a stone. Whatever it is. Now, it doesn't mean, if there's such a thing out there as bad parents, okay? It doesn't mean that you have to do everything your father or mother says. They could be wrong. They could tell you to do something really wrong and really evil. But even in all of that, you still have to honor them. There's something to this day that still bothers me. Long time ago, I don't even know how many years ago, decades ago, I had the chance to baptize my dad. He asked me if I would. He started going to church on the Sabbath. He started doing a lot of things. And I thought, he's going to be in the kingdom. But then he did something that, I really didn't agree with, and I know God didn't agree with, and he knowingly did it. And I'm glad that God is the judge, not me, that I don't have to make that decision. I couldn't agree with him. He never talked to me after that until the day that he died. In fact, I tried to make contact with him when I knew he was dying. Over a year ago. And he wouldn't. My sisters asked him and he wouldn't. He was still my father. Even though he had done evil things, he was still my father. Now I hear people talking about their fathers and they did this and they did that, and maybe they did bad things, okay? They're still your father or your mother. Others talk about, well, my mother did this to me, and I've heard lots of stories. Well, that's not right, but that's still your mother. If you can compromise on the first commandment, if you can compromise on the third commandment, if you can compromise on the fourth commandment, guess what? You'll find a way to compromise on the fifth commandment. And there are people that violate the fifth commandment, and then they go to church and think everything is okay. Sabbath keepers. And it's wrong. It's awful. It's terrible. And it shouldn't be condoned by anyone. Let's take a look at number 6. Exodus 20, verse 13. You shall not murder. I got it up there in New King James and Old King James, and I did this for a reason. There's even confusion on this. Thou shalt not kill in the Old King James. All right. There's examples where God commanded Israel to go out and utterly slay them all, the children, everything. So that God violated his own laws by telling them to do these things. There are 22 different categories of violating God's law that require the death penalty. So if somebody violates this and they're put to death, is that violating the fifth commandment? I'm sorry, the sixth commandment? No. Let me tip you in on a little bit of the confusion. There are different words in Hebrew for kill and murder. Murder is the correct translation. Kill is an incorrect translation. There are people how do I say this? We grew up in an organization where roughly 50% of them are vegetarian. Some of them are vegetarian because of this commandment where they think, well, you got to kill an animal to eat it. God commanded animals to die in sacrifices, and they were killed. Does that violate the sixth commandment? No. It's two completely different things. Let me give you the first one, shakat. It's a primitive root to slaughter or sacrifice, and then Strong's put in massacre. That's really not right, but that's kill, like kill an animal and then eat it, or kill an animal and sacrifice it, or kill someone because they have done some heinous crime and they're convicted of it by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses, and God says if you do these things you must die. That's different than murder. So let me give you the Brown, Driver, and Briggs definition of murder. Retzach. To murder, to slay, to kill really isn't correct. But to murder and slay, it's premeditated, intentionally. You go out and you take somebody's life, you take them out. That's what the sixth commandment is talking about. Let me give you a little bit of trivia. Out of the 10 commandments, there's one of them that's mentioned in all 5 books of the Torah: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Want to know? It's the sixth commandment. You want to know what it is? It's this concept and these statements that if you take someone's life, if you murder them, you forfeit your life. All 5 books, complete in His law. The only commandment that does this. I think it's pretty important to God. I think He's sending us a message here, how important this one is. Let's take a look at number 7. Exodus 20, verse 14. You shall not commit adultery. Pretty simple. Pretty self-explanatory, most people would say. It's very interesting. This commandment, God dedicates a whole commandment to this one thing. This commandment shows the importance and the sacredness of marriage. It elevates how important it is that this union that God creates, that the penalty for violating this one thing is death. Let's go and look at Proverbs chapter 6, verse 32. It says, whoever commits adultery with a woman lacks understanding. In other words, you're stupid. If you do this, you're stupid. It's a polite way of saying lacks understanding. He who does so destroys his own soul. How important is this? Not only physical life, you're supposed to forfeit it and you get put to death. Your spiritual life, your soul, your future, you forfeit it. How important is it? God creates this institution and He guards it so greatly that He says if we violate this, we're stupid and we're doomed. I submit that that's not a suggestion either. Number 8, Exodus 20, verse 15. Thou shalt not steal. Oh, there's so many ways this one is violated. Every day. In fact, we're all guilty of it. Do we cheat? Ever cheated on anything? Do you take credit for ideas? I guess I better tell you. I started out by telling you I did a whole series in 2022 on the 10 Commandments. It took 10 weeks to go through them. I looked at that this morning, and more than half of this came from that. I just pruned a bunch out. I thought about it this morning. I've been wanting to do this subject for quite a while. And so some of what I'm talking about today come from things I was thinking about, the 10 Commandments, and trying to look some verses up and include some things I hadn't used before. And then some of it was I went back and I listened to a presentation that Charlie Kirk did on YouTube, and he brought out some really interesting points. I guess for me not to tell you that some of this come from Charlie Kirk, I'd be stealing some of his ideas. I'm not trying to pass them off as my own. I don't come up with any of this. Okay? But that would be an example. How many people out there, they steal things that they didn't come up with, and then they pass them off as their own? That's another way you could violate it. But this is a bridge to all of the others also. They're all interconnected. What are you talking about? Murder. Isn't that one of the 10 Commandments? Murder? Thou shalt not murder? Stealing a life, when you murder, It's stealing somebody's life. We just got done talking about adultery, right? That's stealing another man's wife. You can't commit adultery without stealing something that does not belong to you. You can't murder without stealing something. They're all put together. And that's why I keep stressing today that compromising on one of them will cause you to Now, you might not go out and commit adultery, or you might not go out and murder somebody, but lesser extents. You'll go out and steal, you cheat. Many of us do it in so many ways we don't even realize that it's stealing. Can we steal from God? There's a huge level of ignorance, and I've been, probably rightfully so, accused of not teaching this one correctly or often enough or explaining it. But let's take a look here at Malachi. Chapter 3, verse 8. Will a man rob God? Yet you have robbed me. But you say, in what way have we robbed you? In tithes and offerings. You are cursed with a curse, for you have robbed me, even this whole nation. I don't know the answer. I don't know the exact number. But let's talk about just the Sabbath-keeping community itself. I propose to you that it's a minority that even understand the tithes. All three of them. Much less practice. Now, if you understand it and don't do it, well, now we're really in trouble. That's rebellion. But even if we don't understand it, for sure we're not going to be doing it, it's still stealing. Here's the last one, and then I'm going to get off this subject. Leviticus, chapter 19, verse 35. Let's read that. You shall do no injustice in judgment, no measurement of length, weight, or volume. You shall have honest scales, honest weights, and an honest ephah, and an honest hin. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt. Now, technically, using this is an honest weight and a measure. So we're violating, this ain't honest money. You can give somebody this, you can put it under your mattress and hide it for 5 years, wake up, and all of a sudden that $20 bill only buys you what $10 would buy you 5 years from now. What's another one? This ain't even money. It's a digital credit somewhere. And then what do you think Satan's really pushing on the digital monetary system? And well, yeah, he's got to use it and have it for his mark of the beast to operate that system. But people even say, well, that's just plastic. Well, the plastic is worth more than the digital numbers behind it that are just entries on a computer. It's another way. Anything we do that scams the system, uses dishonest measurements, it's all stealing. Now, we would get upset if we found out, hey, and it was in the news, they come by and test gas stations. Let me give you an example like that. And maybe you've even seen them do it. I used to run 3 gas stations, and they would come and test it. They take a can, they turn the pump on, and they pump the gas in a can, and they measure exactly how much gas is in there. What if they found out that every gas station, for every gallon of gas they sold you, you only got a half a gallon? People get really upset about that. That's dishonest weights and measures. Let me show you another way that people scam. That's the gas station scamming us. Let me show you another way. People that scam the system. I'm not talking about people that are old and retired or disabled and can't work. I'm talking about people that are physically capable. They're just lazy. They're scamming the system. They're on disability. Part of our family, there's one branch of that family that probably more than 50% of them, by the time they hit 40, they're on disability, collecting a government check one way or the other. Some of them work and work very hard, but the vast majority of this one part of the family, it's a bunch of scammers. That is stealing. Signing up for benefits when you could go out and work and make a job. And if you say, well, why don't you do that? Well, then I lose all my benefits. That's stealing. So many different ways to violate the eighth commandment. But to do that, we have to compromise. And people accept different degrees of compromising. Back to my point, if you compromise on any of them, won't be long and you're compromising on almost all of them. Number 9. Let me take a look at that. Exodus 20, verse 16. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Short and sweet, right? This means more than testifying in court. That's what most people would say, and that would be one way of doing it, but that's what most people would say, bearing false witness. Do you swear to tell the truth? And then you lie. Guess what? There's lies that happen in court every single day. In courts all over the world. It means more than that. Let's look at Exodus chapter 23, verse 1. Is it a sin to lie? Everybody lies. They say, well, it's just a little lie. It's a white lie. Exodus 23:1. You shall not circulate a false report. Do not put your hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness. Doesn't matter what kind of lie it is. Somebody calls even a spouse up. Hey, honey, did you remember to do this? Oh, yeah, I took care of it. And as soon as you hang up, oh, man, they're going to be home pretty quick, and then you quick go and do it. Doesn't matter what the lie is. It's a false report. And if you go along with the false report with somebody else, now you're putting your hand in with them. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 25. Therefore, putting away lying, let each one of you speak truth with his neighbor, for we are members of one another. Lying with someone else or about someone else is violating the 9th commandment. That one happens all the time. And I'm not talking about the world. The world's going to do what the world does. That happens with the church brethren. Does it do any good to say, well, I keep the 4th commandment. I keep every Sabbath. I go to church. I don't buy and sell. I do this and that and the next thing. And then you lie about somebody else? Maybe we can compromise on that one. Don't think so. Number 10. Exodus 20, verse 17. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, nor anything that is your neighbor's. If the world would keep this one, let me change that statement. If Knoxville, Tennessee would keep this one, the businesses would all go out of business. They'd fail and go bankrupt and broke. Everything in society is based on coveting. Clothes, cars, toys, houses, possessions. It's all based on coveting. Look at the ads on TV. Even drugs. They show you somebody out in a field, beautiful flowers and birds flying past. And then they give you this ad for this drug that could cause you to be out in the field enjoying all the beauty of all of this. Oh yeah, I want that. Let me go ask my doctor for this drug. Forget that the side effects are stroke, suicide because of depression, anal leakage, and this whole host of other things. You got to covet that you want that so that you go and you buy their dope. You got to covet, even like car shows and ads for cars, but especially car shows. I've been to some car shows before. Why do they have a half-naked woman laying on the hood of a car, promoting this car? Does it got anything to do with Billy Bob saying, hey, I want that? And then they go down and buy whatever car or truck that is. Get them to covet the half-naked woman, and then they go and they're willing to spend 2 years of whatever salary they make to buy a hunk of tin that's going to rot and drop in value the minute you drive it away from the dealer. Nothing. Clothes. Everything is based off of coveting. Society functions off of this. So this is hard not to get caught up in yourself. But if you covet and if you fall guilty and get deceived and Satan wins on this, is it a sin? Well, let's take a look at the last verse, what I have for today. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 3. But fornication and all uncleanliness, or what's the word? Covetousness. Okay, maybe I got everybody's attention. Let it not even be named among you as is fitting for saints. Neither filthiness, nor foolish talking, nor coarse jesting, which are not fitting, but rather giving of thanks. For this you know that no fornicator, unclean person, nor covetous man who is an idolater has any inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and God. Let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of these things the wrath of God comes upon the sons of disobedience. Therefore do not be partakers with them. Salvational issue. I've been guilty of seeing something and coveting it, wanting it. And if we're honest, probably all of us would have to say the same thing. This is one of the things we've got to flee. This is one of the things we can't be guilty of. Does it matter what it is? A truck, a car, a house, clothes, Oh, what kind of purse is that? I don't know nothing about them, but what kind of, oh, it's a Gucci. Oh, oh. What kind of pants are those? Calvin Klein. I never saw somebody say, oh, and say, what kind of pants are those? Rural King jeans, $9.99. Tommy Hilfiger. Oh. All of that is what society uses to sell this crap. They've got to get us to fall for coveting. For it to work. I'm going to say all of the 10 Commandments are really, really hard. Instead of standing on one and saying, we got this, we better take a look at the other 9. Don't compromise. Don't be guilty. And don't sin. Because if there's anything in that list that we are willing to compromise on, I guarantee you we'll compromise on the rest.
Heavenly Father, we come before you again. Thank you for